Hi again, guys. So that video was cut short a little bit. I'm just going to continue in this video, and I want to just bring your attention to another example. This is again a food delivery system. You can see that there are 5 actors over here: the customer, the applicant, supplier, manager, service person. These are all association relationships indicating to us, firstly, inside of the system, what the system must do, so what the requirements would be of that particular system, and then how each actor engages with those requirements, or how each actor engages with that system. Note again that these are all functional requirements, not non-functional requirements. So order food is written as the verb and the subject. Hire employee, reorder supplies, produce reports, track sales. It always needs to be written like that, as simply and plainly as possible. And then I just want to bring your attention to this relationship over here. So I did not mention users, and some of you, if you picked it up, you might say, but that was not one of the 4 that I mentioned. And the reason for that, the reason why we've put this example in here, is because sometimes you'll find on the internet that they use the word users. It's written with the pointy brackets like this, just like include, and it actually serves the same purpose as include. So here we have reorder supplies includes tracking the sales. So when you see users, it literally refers to include. You might as well just even write include there. We prefer that we use include and extend. But if you see examples from the internet and you see the word users, it would refer to the same functionality or the same purpose of what we've explained now regarding the include relationship. So I want to bring you back to the slide where I said that a full use case model comprises of 2 parts. We've talked about the diagram part. And hopefully you understand that. There are many examples that we will do. I can also record more videos about how to draw the different scenarios based on case studies. But that was all that I wanted to say around diagrams. The next part of this video will look at formal use case document and how we write this out in detail given the template that we've shared with you. So remember that when we say draw the use case or do the use case model, we refer to both of these. You draw the diagram and then you write the use case for a specific little ellipse. And I will explain that in a minute. Okay, so this is the template that we shared with you. You might find 1 or 2 things being added, but we'll tell you about that. Please memorize this template. It's really important that you know it for the tests and exams. Let me explain each section of this template quickly. So remember that I spoke about the diagram. So each of these little ellipses over here, these little use cases, there would be a template written out for each one. So if you look at order food, for example, I would have a template that would be written out. This whole thing would be written out for the use case of order food. So if I see this particular template over here and it says make call, I know that there must be a diagram where there's a little bubble that says make call. And we will tell you which use case you need to write the formal description out for. So if I look at this diagram over here and I have 5 use cases over here, I literally have to have 5 descriptions. And that would mean 5 of these little tables, right? So the table would have the use case name, which is make call. There would be a description, something that you would make up to explain what this is about. And then there would be goal levels. Now I'm going to explain this a little bit now. We have 3 goal levels. There's the strategic, the user goal, and the sub-function goal. I'm going to pause there and then I'm going to talk about the goals. So what we need you to do is to look at the document that was added to eCanva that is titled Writing Effective Use Cases. It's written by Cockburn, and basically it describes these 3 goal levels and gives us a lot of information about these goal levels. So you remember that I said by definition an actor engages with the system to achieve a goal. Now that goal can be one of 3 types of goals. And this document that I'm referring to from Cockburn actually explains each one in detail. So the goal is an action that the user wants to accomplish from the system. The level refers to the type or the scope of this goal, right? And when we look at the strategic goal, it really is a high level goal. And this is very similar to the types of requirements that we spoke about in terms of business, user, and system requirements. Here, the strategic goals are very high level, more on an organizational level. And these goals are written for the formal use case descriptions, like I've said. So a strategic goal is a white goal, and what we say is above sea level, and we can do this in a multi-sitting. So the strategic goal is mostly answering the question of why. Like, why do we need to have this system? Why do we need to have this particular functionality? The user goal, which is a C-level goal, can be done in one sitting. So when we said multi-sitting, it means that I can't achieve that goal just by sitting down now and answering the phone, or just by sitting down now and typing a document. I won't be able to achieve the strategic goal in one sitting. I will need to do that over a number of sittings or a number of weeks or months or etc. before I can actually achieve that goal. So you can see that it's a high level goal. It alludes to why this project was brought into existence, for example. And then the user goal relates to the what are we referring to now in substantial terms, and it's usually referred to as the blue goal in terms of color. And use cases at this level use a person at a screen, for example, in terms of a little icon. And then and the white goal uses a cloud in terms of an icon. And then when we look at the sub-function goals, this is below sea level, or the partial goal. It's an indigo and it relates to the how, right? So I just want to try and explain this a little bit. When we look at strategic goals, like I said, it's the very high level up in the cloud goals. It's more about why the business chose to make a particular decision. When we look at the user goals, here we are talking about a particular thing that can be done multiple times over in one sitting. So a user goal is most often the goal of the primary actor trying to get the work done with or in relation to the system. So a user goal addresses the question, does your job performance depend on how many of these you do per day? Let's say we talk about making a call. That could be a user goal because I want to do many of those in one particular day. The test to see if it's a user goal. Can it be done by one person in one place at one time, 2 to 20 minutes at a time? Can I go to lunch as soon as this goal is completed? Can I ask for the raise if I do as many of these? So often if you can answer those, then it usually is a user goal. When we do more of the written descriptions, you will see it becomes easier to identify these goals as we go along. With the sub-function goals, basically these are not always included and they're only included as needed. These are very behind the scenes type of goals. So if I take an example of a vending machine, right? If you go to the EMS building, there's a vending machine over there. The strategic goal in terms of that system would be, why has EMS decided to put a vending machine over here in the EMS building? What was the need that they were trying to fill, right? If I'm looking at the user goal related to this example, then it would be all of the functionality that a user would want to do over and over and over again. So if I'm going to go and buy a chocolate, then that would be a user goal. If I'm going to say insert coin, for example, that could be a user goal. when I'm looking at sub-function goal, and it's a user goal because I can do it now and achieve it now and it's done now. When I'm looking at a sub-function goal, it's usually the behind the scenes type of stuff. So it's something that that ensures that the user goal is achieved, right? So for example, having items in the vending machine, having the electricity working, for example, accepting paper money, for example. Those are all sub-function goals. So looking at the template again, you would need to indicate for make a call what level is the goal. You won't write all three, you will choose and you will say which one it is. Then you need to write the actors, then you need to write the preconditions, and the preconditions are basically assertions of what the state of the world is at the time when you want to start using this goal. So for example, the user must be logged in, the user must have money or something like that. Then you have assumptions of what you think needs to be in place. And again, I'm running out of time. So let me just quickly go through this, and this is the very most important part of this template. So we have the precondition and we have the post condition. Now the post condition, the precondition is before this main success scenario and the post condition is after this main success scenario. The main success scenario is really the main thing of this diagram. What you need to do here is to indicate in a number of steps 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 7, up to 9, between 7 and 9, not more than that, is to indicate what steps in the most literal form you would need to follow in order to make a call, right? So let's say pick up the phone, dial the number, etc., etc., and you would list those. The most important thing here is the numbering. So you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have failure extensions. You would then investigate for each number what could possibly go wrong. So if something could go wrong for number 1, then in my failure extensions over here, I'm going to have 1A and what the failure would be. So there would be no airtime, for example. The number would not be saved, for example. So I would look at each number item and I would look at what the failure extension would be for that step. Right? So if it was step number 2 and there was something that could go wrong, then I would have 2A over here. If there were 2 things that could go wrong with number 2, then I'd have 2A and 2B. And then we move on to the error handling. So I would want to indicate for each of the errors that I've identified, what will I do to fix it. So here I have 1A, which is an error for number 1, and I'm going to have 1A1 over here to indicate that the 1A1 is the error handling for the error of number 1A. When we do a worked example, you will see this in effect, but you really need to understand that the numbering here is very important. If you don't have the correct numbering, you will lose marks. Essentially, what we're saying is the main success scenario indicates what steps I need to follow to achieve this goal. And then I need to look at the failure extensions for each one of those steps to see what could possibly go wrong. And then I need to indicate how I would handle each one of those failure extensions. Okay. So a good method to follow is to first identify the actors and their goals, then write out the main success scenario, then identify and list possible failure extensions, and then look at how you will handle those failure extensions. So now there's this example that I will do in our webinar, but you can also look at this example in your slides. Time will not allow me to go through it now, but go through it. And then we look at how we identify the functional requirements over here. And then we see how we document each one of those functional requirements into a use case diagram. And then we say, how do we write out the formal description, which I've just spoken about. This is a very basic format. It's not the whole template that I've shown you. But let's say I want the written out description for set alarm, which is over here. set alarm, and I would write out the description looking like this.